Hello again and welcome again. My name is Sean Fallon. This is From First to Last. Today my guest, she was created by man and she rebelled against her creators. She's here, Becky Belzile. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. What show did you choose for us today?
Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica, awesome. So Battlestar Galactica ran from 2003 to 2010. There were 75 episodes, but also a 3-hour miniseries, a spin-off movie, and multiple webisodes. So it's quite hard to sort of say how much of it there is. There's just lots and lots. And then obviously it's a remake of another show and it's spun off into other things, but we'll come around to that. Mm-hmm. So, Becky, what is your experience with Battlestar Galactica?
Honestly, I hadn't heard of it, so I didn't hear about it until the Blu-ray box set came out. And I was dating my husband now, and he had ordered them from Amazon, and he was really excited when the package arrived. And he's like, yeah, it's my Battlestar Galactica. And I looked at it, and I'm a big Trekkie, so I looked at it and I'm like, well, it's not Star Trek. Like, it's probably not even good. And he's like, just try it. So I watched, I think just half of the miniseries, and I was like, oh my God. This is amazing. And then I don't remember anything between when it started and when it ended. So
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I didn't watch it in real time. I think I saw the sort of the reaction to the finale online, and I was like, oh, it's a bit. I was like, God, this show just completely passed me by. So I had just finished. I just finished a teaching contract, and I had 3 weeks before I was going back to England. So I had moved in with my, again, then girlfriend, now wife, and she was going to work, and I was just killing time. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, I'll check out Galactica. And yeah, same thing. I started watching it, and I'm not a big Trekkie, but I'm a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And it was that sort of thing of, straight away, I think, God, I can't for the life of me think, thinking back on, watching it, obviously now, I think it was just straight away, that opening shot where it's just the uncut, going around the ship and you're meeting all the characters. It's like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is going to be really interesting. Mm-hmm. And then just sort of as it escalated more and more and more and more, I was like, oh no, this is going to be, yeah. And then the same thing, it's a bit of a fugue state after that. It's just sort of, and then I was just watching it all the time. Just every spare second I was watching it and just blitzing it right the way to the end. Just hooked me right in.
Yeah, it was too much. I was watching 4 episodes at a time at times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's weird because I see that was something I used to do so much when I was younger. I say I'm only 32 now. I'm not some doddering old man. But I would definitely I remember the second season of Lost, I got the box set of that. And yeah, you'd watch 4 or 5 episodes on the bounce, just one, just hooked in.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm more sort of oh, I'll savor this like a fine wine.
Yeah, exactly.
No, binge or nothing.
Yeah, it was I gotta find out what happens. This is real time. It depends on me watching it.
Yeah, that's it. I've got to. If I don't watch it, how are the survivors going to find their way to Earth?
Yeah, exactly.
It's such a weird show. It's interesting that you were saying that about you being a Trekkie, and I was saying about Star Wars because it sort of falls in that interesting it's. I've heard a lot of comparisons as well to Firefly.
Oh, you know what?
I think it is.
I was hoping you wouldn't bring up Firefly because everybody always brings up Firefly when you talk about Battlestar.
Yeah, but my point is this is better than Firefly.
Oh, thank God.
Because I've never actually managed to watch. I've watched. I really like the Firefly movie, and I've watched a couple of episodes, and obviously I did an episode of it for this podcast.
Yeah.
But it Battlestar Galactica, it doesn't have this thing of it's not clean like Star Trek, and it's not magical like Star Wars, and it's not sort of fun time frolics like Firefly. It just has its own thing in the center where it's there's elements of each, but yeah, there's some things even in this in this miniseries Ty jettisoning all the crew to stop the fire, which is sort of standard sort of movies about being on the sea or submarine movies. But then the added thing of later double downing on that and having Rosalind having to sacrifice a bunch of the fleet to escape.
God, yes.
Oh no. This is great. This is totally a new animal.
Yeah. Because it deals with so much politics and religion, and it seemed plausible. Do you know what I mean? At least at first. When you watch the pilot or the miniseries and then you watch the finale, I was like, this is batshit crazy. Like, if you didn't know what happened in the middle, you'd be like, this is garbage. But knowing the journey that gets them there is amazing.
Yeah, that's it. I think this is it was actually quite weird you saying that. It put me in mind of Twin Peaks. Like, Twin Peaks is one of them where when I was doing that episode, when I was watching the episodes of that for this podcast, I watched them with my wife, who had no idea what Twin Peaks was.
Right.
And she had that first episode hooked her in. She was like, oh, so it's like a murder mystery, soap opera thing. Yeah, this is cool. Then we watched the last episode, and she was like, I have no fucking clue how you get from that to that.
Yeah.
I don't like this at all. I was like, no, but if you watched the 20 episodes, then it actually makes sense how Twin Peaks ends.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same. Like, once you get to that point where Baltar's talking about angels and things like that,
yeah.
what the shit? You know, how do you get from there to there?
Yeah, and that hybrid stuff, and he's speaking in riddles. I'm like, this is too funny. I can't do it.
Yeah, that's it. Like, oh yeah, if I can understand why people would probably, if they came into this blind, why they wouldn't be too keen.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, this like this miniseries episode is so good because it takes so much time putting all its pieces in place. Like, I made the note that the Cylon attack, like the major attack, doesn't happen until 40 minutes in.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got like a good episode length of just like, right, painting all the characters with they've got quite big conflicts before the Cylons get involved.
So much
cancer and so on. Yeah,
so much baggage too, like regarding each other even.
Yeah, very much so. Like, sort of the Adamas obviously on odds, and Starbucks sort of, you know, with what's his name, with the XO, and they've got their whole thing, and and all that is even like that's all put in place and then just exacerbated by the genocide that follows.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I do have. What was your opinion of the character of Gaius Baltar?
The first time I watched the show, I hated him immediately. I remember saying, like, I really hate this guy. He's really annoying. And Pascal's like, oh, that's too bad because he's like a huge part of the show. And I thought, well, whatever, I guess I'll just wait it out. But he's annoying throughout the whole thing, but he sort of has to be there. He's so important. And where he ends up, you know, with his harem is one of the funniest things I've ever watched.
But again, makes perfect sense. That's where he ends up. His
whole journey is just totally bizarre, and he plays it so well with that stupid, helpless look on his face at all times.
Yeah, because he's such an interesting character, because he's presented sort of early on as being like super smart, very cool, in his suits and his little cigars or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the second anything goes slightly wrong, he's just like wide-eyed 10-year-old boy.
His eyes are so wet all the time.
Yeah. That character's a tough one because, like you say, he is just in it all the time. He is like a major character, and they do sort of try and humanize him a bit, but for the most part, you're just like, oh my god, this guy is so frustrating all the time.
Yes.
Just an annoying, ratty little character.
That is the best description, a ratty little character. Ugh, he's the worst.
He's the worst. And then on like the flip side of that, you do have like, because it's weird, like a lot of my notes are just the names of characters with a tick next to them. So I've just got like, you know, Adama, tick, Starbuck, tick, Rosalind. They're like, oh yeah, this character's amazing, this character's amazing. Like, I think obviously, Commander Adama, like Edward James Olmos, is just one of those incredible like sci-fi characters, or just any character.
Yes, I call him Space Dad because he's so good.
Yeah, he's amazing. It's amazing, like how well sort of like, because there is that interesting thing. I think I read Olmos said he'd signed on for the show on the proviso there was never aliens in the show. Like he always wanted to just be Cylons and humans, and that was it.
Okay.
And I think there is that sort of thing of you could totally transplant his whole character and his plot line, put it in like a a show about, you know, the Napoleon, like, so a show where he's on a ship on the sea, and it would still make perfect sense. You know, he's not like a big grand sci-fi character. He's just a military man who ends up in this huge position of power.
Yes.
Being the commander of the fleet,
And
of the final fleet.
he has that sort of like yelling monologue down to a T too. Like he's always standing there yelling at everybody, and it's so encouraging. And I just want to be like, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you believe that people would follow him. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, and I think in that first episode he has like 2 or 3, maybe even 4, like big speeches,
Yeah.
and each one is just it just completely sells. Like there's an interesting thing as well with sort of that character where he starts the show and he's doing his speech and he's, you know, a bit disappointed that the thing's about to become a museum.
Yeah.
And then obviously by the end of it he's saving the world, saving humanity, which is amazing.
Yeah, and you can tell right away that he's just trying to be a good guy. Like he knows what the right thing to do is, and he will always try to do it.
Yeah, that and that sort of I do enjoy that in the miniseries where he's sort of like, no, the war, no, we gotta put the fleet somewhere and then we gotta go fight the war. And Rosalind keeps saying to him, no, the war is over, we need to turn tail and run.
Yeah.
And he is the, like, well, all the other military people are ready to fight. He's the first one to sort of click and be like, nah, we've got to save humanity, so we've got to make a run for it. And that sort of as well mirrors the final episode where he sees the photo of Hera and he's like, no, this is the right thing to do. We've got to go save the kid.
Yeah.
You know, and he's just, you say that sort of moral code of like, what is the right thing to do?
Yeah.
Which is very good.
And you can see him struggle too. I mean, that's the best part, is that he's struggling with his own stuff. But I think Rosalind and he have the most interesting kind of chemistry on screen. I mean, talking about their like sort of side love, but also the minute she comes in, she's contradicting him and questioning him, and I'm like, that's the best. You should question everything he does. Just,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, I love the way she pushes back on him, and he always relents.
Yeah, that's it. Because like it's good that there isn't sort of like a learning curve where she sort of like becomes president and there's like a few episodes where she's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, right, she's president, she's a bona fide ass kicker straight away. Just like, no, okay. If she's going to be the person in charge, she's going to be in charge. And she's just instantaneously the person, like.
Yeah, and I think that the reason the show is so good, and I think right now, actually, I might just watch the whole thing again, because it's about people who just do what they have to do. Like, things are horrible for them. Their chances are so small, but they all step into their role in a way that's really admirable, I think.
And I think it's like, you know, obviously today, with the current sort of like political situation and all that, it's almost sort of fantasy now, this idea of people, you know, doing the right thing to make the world a better place. Like, some people are, but like the people who actually are in power,
Yes.
it's frustrating.
Well, if we had only, how many do they have? 30,000 people. If we could just round them all up, I think we could be okay with just 30,000 people. But yeah,
Yeah, that's probably fine. Yeah. I think like you say, that sort of Rosalind Adama dynamic is so good because it's sort of, I think even in that first episode, it's slightly flirty, like the tiny bit, but for the most part, it's very, very contentious. Like, it is sort of a thing of like, he doesn't respect her, she just wants him to do what she fucking tells him to do.
yes, I love it.
And I think that's good. There's not a sort of an instant thing where they're like, oh yeah, no, we see eye to eye on this. Because I mean, it is such a, like, the whole situation as it's painted out, obviously you've got, you know, 30,000 or 50,000. Actually, no, I think the first episode it's 50,000, but by the final episode it's only 30.
Okay.
Like, this is the last remnants of the human race, so you can't fuck around. There's no sort of like do-overs. If you balls it up and everyone gets killed, that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. So I think it's good that sense. There's no sort of playfulness. It's like, no, every decision has to be, because I mean that was the great thing about the show at the start, before it went a bit more sort of metaphysical and all weird, was this concept of like, well, what if you were the person who's in charge of not just the safety of like your crew or a few civilians. It's literally every single person. Like every person you lose is not going to come back. You know, you're not going to get that person back. And I think there's a lot of stuff where people are sat around. I mean, and you know, I find this shit compelling. People sat around tables, sort of like debating what to do, and it's always a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, and they all like have to live with those decisions. That's ugh.
Yeah, and I think they do that amazing in the first episode where, because like when they have to do the thing and they have to the civilian fleet is all together and the raider shows up and sees them and then vanishes, and it's like, right, well, he's going to bring back a load of baddies, so anyone who can jump, but everyone else has to just be left behind. And I think even watching it and knowing what happened, there's still that sense of like when they're doing the countdown, you're like, oh, any second now, Galactica's going to appear and save the day. It's just going to be like, oh, here's Galactica. You know, he's going to blow up all the raiders, and it's like, Adama's going to be like, oh, glad you could make it, Galactica. Love you, Dad. You know?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
No, none of that's going to happen. You're going to watch a child be, taken out in a flash of light and all that. And you're like, okay, so that is a good sort of like mission statement for the show. It's like, no. Forget, Han Solo is not going to show up and save the day. This is going to get really dark and quite fucked. And obviously it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole sequence is incredible when it's sort of like, where it's like, oh, we'll give them the coordinates for the rendezvous. And Lee Adama's like, no, we won't, because they can then find us. So we've got to... It's just like, nope, those people are fucked. They just got to be left behind. And like you say, that's a decision that they have to live with then.
Yeah. I remember the first time I watched it, people getting really weepy about these decisions, and I would get so frustrated. I'm like, you know what? This is your life. You just have to make them. You just have to do it, man. Just man up. But now watching it, I'm like, oh, that would be hard. So it's just funny how like 5-6 years can change your perspective. I mean, even with some of the characters, I felt differently. I think the first time I met Starbuck, I thought, God, just tone it down a notch. Like, you're kind of psychotic. And now I'm like, punch him, Starbuck. Just punch him and tell him his wife. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that is very odd. Like, I've definitely noticed that with a few different shows. For this podcast, like stuff I watched when I was a teenager, and then watching it as a 30-year-old, and you're like, oh God, yeah, it's interesting how your favorite characters slip and change and stuff like that. It's interesting, and like you say, like that whole thing where they've got to leave the fleet behind, or where Ty's gonna jettison the dudes. I think when I was like in my 20s, I was like, yeah, obviously, it's what you got to do. Don't even worry about it. Just do it and move on. And then now watching it, like, oh shit, God, how would you actually live with that decision? Of like, just leaving a bunch of people and obviously poor like Lee Adama's got to listen to them on the radio when they're all like, I hope you rot in hell.
Oh yeah.
And jumps away. It's great. I mean, I think that's the thing that sort of separates it from, obviously, definitely like Star Wars and Star Trek were never really like. I think Star Trek probably had more stuff like this of like diplomacy and lose situations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Star Wars doesn't really. And then like Firefly, whenever they had anything that sort of like was a bit morally dubious, it was always sort of played as like a cool thing. Oh God, yeah, this character, he's in shades of grey. That's cool. Whereas Battlestar Galactica was like, yeah, there are decisions that are made in this show that would 100% give people like PTSD and just really fuck them up forever. Like,
yeah,
which is amazing.
It is really like, and I loved how the show sort of addressed all of my questions as I was asking them. Like, I remember at one point being like, okay, this is all really great, but what about water? And then the next episode, they're like, we need some water. I'm like, oh, this is going to go so well.
Yeah, that's it. I think that there was that thing, of like, it was a very different plot line to what you used to, because you used to sort of like space shows being like little adventures and stuff like that, whereas this was like, the stakes were always as high as they could ever be. And like you say, the little adventures were like, oh yeah, we're going to run out of water and everyone's going to die, so we need to find water. And then that would be a secret, And I think instantly from the start, they've sort of established, the stakes they could not be any higher. Let's see what happens. And also the villains are possibly already on the board, already on the ship, cold, heartless machines, and smarter than your main characters. Let's go.
Yes.
Here's some drama for you.
Yeah.
Just as the show in general, like as a technical thing, I always appreciate the fact that it was filmed like it was like guerrilla film. It was always like the handheld camera, like people following people around and stuff like that. And even like watching it this week in like, you know, I bought it off iTunes in like HD or whatever, and there are shots of it that are so grainy. It's like watching it through like a security camera.
Yeah, I noticed that too this time. I'm like, because they filmed it in HD, right? Like
I think so.
for the Blu-ray, and then there's these scenes that are super grainy, and I thought,
yeah,
this is kind of an interesting effect. I mean, there's a sort of sheen to the show that I really like.
Yeah.
It's takes itself seriously on every level, but not too seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's. I just like the idea of it being like filmed like a documentary. Like that was the sort of thing they went for. Like, oh yeah, it's not going to be all clean lines and stuff like that. You're going to get, because there's definitely scenes in every episode where the camera's just like right in people's faces, you know, while they're like, or like going around the CIC and the Dreadus and all that, and sort of like get in the nooks and crannies and just sort of like being quite intrusive.
Yeah.
Which was always cool. I always enjoyed that, like that sort of technical thing of because obviously a lot of like sci-fi, it's very broad and grand scale and look at this wonderful space opera I'm presenting to you.
Yeah.
Whereas this was always like dirty, like in the cracks, like, which was always good. You don't really see that often in terms of like sci-fi, I think.
No, and it's interesting that you mentioned space opera, because one of the things that I fell in love with about the show was the music and how different it was from other sci-fi shows. I thought, like, the percussion in the beginning, I think his name's Bear McCreary. I don't know if he did the music for the miniseries, or if he came on after that.
I'm not sure.
But whatever he did is magical. Like, I used to listen to the soundtrack at work, which is a little bit embarrassing, but...
No, I mean, it's a good dramatic soundtrack. Gets you ready to do things.
Data entry.
Yeah, so he was like the assistant for the miniseries to Richard Gibbs, and then Richard Gibbs dropped out and Bear McCreary came on.
It was a good decision.
And he's done quite a few things. Yeah, he does Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think he does Outlander. It's good. I mean, yeah.
I think he did some Walking Dead as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, the thing was, like, in these episodes, there's a lot of, like, chanting and sort of, like, that kind of stuff in the background, and, like mournful sort of, like, East Asia dirges.
Yeah.
You know, sort of, like, very interesting choices. It's not constantly, like, soaring strings. It's obviously the opening theme with, like, the big drums and all that. That was the thing. It's such an interesting show in the sense of, like, yes, it is a sci-fi show, and yes, it is set in space, but so much of it doesn't match what we would put in that box. Like the music, the way it's filmed, the plot lines, just the amount of violence, the amount of sex, the amount of weirdness, just general weirdness.
And religion.
Yeah. And religion, yeah. I mean, I find myself, like, I think when I was watching it, I was reading Game of Thrones before the series was made.
Okay.
And I sort of, like, for some reason, I put the two of them in my head quite closely, like the idea of these different civilizations having different religions and having to interact and all that. And sort of, like, the fantasy religions and everything. And, yeah, it's such... Because the show, I forgot, I didn't realize how religious it went until rewatching the finale yesterday. Where I was like, oh, yeah, so the big sort of, like, final speech is all about, like, God and angels. It's like, shit, that took me a part of it. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I actually, at the time I was in Bible college when I watched it. So,
right.
I remember my mother-in-law was in the room one time and we were watching it. And, you know, the Cylons are always going on about, like, the one true God and God's plan. Yeah. And she's like, is this a Christian show? I'm like, I mean, not really. They just pull a lot of that mythology into it, and she just couldn't wrap her head around it. But I'm actually excited to watch it now, being where I am totally removed from that sort of lifestyle, to see how it comes across that way.
Yeah, because I mean, are you religious?
Not anymore, no.
No, no, same. I mean, I'm not and wasn't.
Right.
And sometimes stuff like that does sort of like watching this as well when it was a lot of God stuff. I wouldn't say it rubbed me up the wrong way, but it is something that interestingly enough, I can take a leap of faith that a giant sort of space aircraft carrier can jump faster than light. But as soon as you start mentioning God, I was just sort of like, you lost me. this is a bit beyond me. But yeah, no, I think I didn't realize sort of because I remembered that whole thing of like the Cylons having God or believing in God. But yeah, that whole angels thing really took me by surprise. I completely forgot that.
Yeah, and I think when people were outraged about the end and those kind of things about what Starbuck is and all of these angel things, I remember thinking like this has been part of the show literally since the first episode. I mean, the Cylons are like, the reason we are going to kill you all is because God wants us to. And everybody else is like, we believe in 12 gods, and now we're going to follow some prophetic dreams and a book to find. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like, this has been going on since the beginning. You can't be surprised.
Yeah, you can't suddenly decide you don't.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, to talk about the finale, I was sort of thinking about like different kinds of TV finale, and you do have like the ones that are really good and the ones that are really bad, and then you have those ones that sort of like sit in the center and I guess they just rub people. They're massively divisive. So you have like the Sopranos one, Lost, and then obviously this one. And you make a really good point there, and I think that sort of applies to the Lost finale as well. Of like, if you've been watching the show, this is how it ends. You know, this isn't all new stuff. There are like finales that will introduce like a random new concept right at the last second. But like, if you've been watching Battlestar Galactica from beginning to end, this is how it ends. This is the way the story finishes. It's so odd that people would be like, okay, so there's been all this angel stuff and God stuff, but they're not going to address that in the finale. Cool.
Or to think that it's going to be like a logical finale after all of that.
Yeah.
I heard people say it was, it's too easy. They just find Earth. I'm like, are you not remembering like the 75 episodes that we spent looking for it? Like,
yeah, that's the thing. It's like, oh, they just find it. Like, no, they've been, the show has been on for 7 years. Yeah. It's been time, you know. And all the stuff that builds up to the like Starbuck putting in the code and things like that. You don't have to watch the other episodes again to see. They show all the pieces she has a flashback that shows you all the different ways those pieces have been given to her. And then like the Opera House dream happens again, and there's a lot of stuff like that where it's like big payoffs to stuff that's been seeded, and the show makes sure that you see the seeds. It's like, no, remember, because we talked about it here, and here. Yeah. Now this is what it is.
It's like a flow chart.
Yeah, it's like, right, so I'm going to show you exactly how we get from here to here. It's going to be 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Let me get my dry erase board.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is weird, like, because I think there are definitely like the bad finales, like, and I think exactly how you're saying it there is actually perfect. Like, if you're watching the show, this is the finale. So I think like a fantastic finale, and I talked about this recently on the Dexter episode, which is obviously a shite finale, is Breaking Bad, because that show ends the way it's, the show builds to it, and then it has the ending that you've watched for. Whereas like, say, How I Met Your Mother or Dexter, which are crap, they sort of build up, and then they just don't end in a way that matches the show.
Right.
Whereas like this and Lost, two that are hugely divisive for people, end the way the show was. It's odd that people freak out.
Yeah, I haven't seen Lost, but I know how it ends. And all I've heard is outrage. I don't think I've ever heard anybody support the end of it.
Well, there is an episode of this podcast in which me and Skylar and Diego all talk about our love for it. And it is a weird ending, but it's a big emotional, cathartic ending.
Right.
And much like this, it's got some weird elements, but it's satisfying. Like, I enjoy... When I was building up to getting to this finale, I'd started watching the show because of outrage over the finale. And when I got to it, I was like, oh yeah, this is killer. I love this. Like,
yeah,
a big ending where Adama gets like all the volunteers, and then goes and kills, or like goes into the Cylon colony and fucks them up. Yes, please.
Yeah, and you want to talk about emotional. Like, the first time I watched the finale, I had to take time to prepare myself because the show was ending. Like, I was so upset that the show was going to end. And then I cried through the whole thing. So this time I'm like, you know what? I didn't watch it. I didn't journey with these people again. It doesn't matter. Like, I was full on sobbing yesterday watching it. Yeah. I'm like, because honestly, the show is all about Adama and Rosalind to me by the end. That's all I care about. So the end, the way that they end is the saddest thing and also the most beautiful thing. So you're just like, oh, that cabin. He's going to build that cabin, you know? Oh, God.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely gorgeous because, like, obviously, Rosalind is just from the beginning, just a bona fide ass kicker. You know, she just kicks people's asses.
Yeah.
And when you've got, like, that thing of when they've made the red line across the floor, and, you know, and she rises from her deathbed to get there, and then he sees her, and she's like, oh, you know, you weren't going to leave without me.
Oh, God.
I wouldn't think of it. And you know, he takes her over to Starbuck, who supports and all that. And then, you know, and then Rosalind is in the medical bay doing the work, and then obviously at the end, they're on the planet together, and it's so close. They're so close to just, like, living happily ever after, but... You know, what they get is enough, and no, I love it.
It's not enough, though. Oh, I knew I was going to cry.
But yeah, okay. We'll go to less all right, thank you. Tearful things.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they go for that final episode of all the flashbacks, like to sort of, I don't know, there was some. I don't know, because some of the flashbacks just seemed weird, and some of them were really good.
I liked them because I think it shows, like, hey, remember that these used to be, like, regular-ass people with regular-ass lives. And look at how they were before they had to put that all aside and save humanity.
That's true. And then you do have the joyful sight of seeing Adama puke on himself.
Yeah. It is so funny.
Didn't see that coming.
And he just looks into the sky with a stupid drunken smile.
Yeah, it's... I quite like the idea as well of, you know, at that point, both Adama's, like, Lee and Bill aren't talking to each other, but both in their flashbacks, they're both just drunk as shit.
Yeah.
Just on probably different sides of the city, just trying to deal with their own nonsense. And I think it's weird as well to see, like, civilian Adama, you know, when he's in, like, a suit and tie, and like, nah, don't like this, don't like it. You should be in the Galactica fucking up Cylons. I don't like this idea of you, like, and a job interview.
And hanging out at strip clubs.
Hanging out at strip clubs with, like, why is Ty and his wife at... they're the worst.
They are the worst. Ellen is just... I can't take it. Ugh.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, they keep killing her off, but can't get it to stick.
Yeah.
But then also as well, civilian Starbuck, where she's, like, all very bubbly and kind of dancing around and cooking dinner for her boyfriend and his brother. Like, no. Don't like this.
No, I like it because I think it shows, you know, how she was before her husband died. And then...
Oh, yeah, no, totally. But it's just sort of like, I think I preferred her when she was out of her mind.
Oh, God, I hate Crazy Starbuck, where she's just yelling all the time about the directions. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think that actress plays that character so well where when she is sort of, like, modern, short-haired Starbuck, and she's just like, her teeth are just clenched all the time.
Yes.
She's just like furious and just wants to, you know, fuck people up.
Yeah.
Like, I think she does. I mean, that was definitely a thing with this show as well. Like the actors were amazing. Like some fantastic performances, and even like obviously from almost down to everyone else. Just not really a bum note in the cast. You know, sometimes you do have a show and you're like, yeah, it's good, except for this guy sucks a little bit. But I always thought they were just, from top to bottom, really good.
Yeah, if I can think of anybody, maybe Anders was probably my least favorite. But I think he's just the type of guy he was. I was like, ugh, you're the worst.
Yeah, I mean, he is... That character's quite weird, because he sort of, like, comes out of nowhere. And again, it's one of those weird things of, like, watching the first one and the last one. Well, Anders isn't in the first one, and by the time the last one comes along, he's naked in a pool of water. Yeah. With a bald head, talking in riddles. Like,
Yeah.
Wonder what that character's journey was.
Yeah, and then all his flashbacks, he's just a sports dude.
Yeah, just a big jock. Looks like he's bathing in a cake mixer.
I was totally thinking that.
Because it's like one of those machines you put dough in, and it kind of it's like an automatic kneader. Yeah. I'd have to look into that because I'm pretty sure that's what they've done. It's like, okay, we don't want to build a futuristic bathtub, so cram yourself in here, Anders, and we're just going to fill it with water.
Well, isn't there an inside joke that the show was always cutting corners, and that's why every piece of paper in the show has no corners on it?
That makes a lot of sense.
So it's like it's like a running joke that they just went with through the whole thing.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense. Like, I just thought that was sort of like, oh, we need books to look futuristic. So I'll just chop the corners off. And then they do that for everything, because all like the photo frames are in that same sort of hexagonal.
Yeah.
And then the dog tags.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this finale, there's a few cool callbacks to the first episode. Like, in the first episode, when they talk about how they've jumped out of, like, known space.
Yeah.
They keep saying, we've crossed the red line. Okay, now we've crossed the red line and we're out there. And I couldn't work out what that meant, if that meant, like, there was a red line on the map that sort of said, right, this is known space and they've gone over it, or it was an expression that I didn't know. But then at the end, obviously, they have done a complete red line down the center of the ship, and crossing it is going on the suicide mission?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But it felt like there was some sort of connection to the two.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And, well, no, I don't want to... a scene that kind of got me, and I've just put, like, a little sad face next to it, is when Starbuck's talking to Adama and says, oh, I don't know what I am or anything. And he says, you're my daughter.
Oh, good God.
And I was like, oh, that's too much, man.
Yeah, it is too much.
Yeah, no, just there's so many, so many good ones. So many. And I think, I think this is definitely, like, much like the last finale, I think it is how much you're sort of into the show I think it is kind of an emotional one, because, like, the last 45 minutes are essentially just goodbyes and finales. It's sort of, I think by the last 45 minutes they've arrived on Earth, so it's a lot of just like characters going their separate ways or having their last interactions and all stuff like that. Yeah. And I do appreciate that in a finale, when they sort of go, right, this is the last episode, the story's over, here's all your goodbyes.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that, and they don't sort of like, there's not a sense of this story's going to continue. Like, no, everyone's just going to chill, maybe do a bit of farming, build a civilization. You don't need to worry about that. That's just, everyone's just going to live happily ever after. Don't even worry.
Well, and then presumably that this all happened in our past, right? So we all descended from our space parents.
Our space parents.
Yeah.
Space dad.
It's a cycle. I mean, do you think that the show is warning about technology? Like, do you think that that's a point that they're trying to push?
I'd forgotten about this, but the final episode where it's like, oh, maybe we'll break the cycle,
mm-hmm.
and then it shows all that stuff at like the Japan Robot Expo.
Yeah.
Like, oh, is it anti-robots or just anti-technology? It's like, oh shit, I don't know. It's interesting that, like, Ronald Moore, I think his next big his next big success was Outlander, which is a show about, living in the past.
Right.
Maybe that's his thing.
Yeah,
Wasn't he a Star Trek writer?
I don't know if it's like I heard some people say, they felt like the show was trying to be fear-mongering about artificial intelligence and stuff like that, and even today, like, I've had conversations with coworkers who are like, we gotta watch those robots, like, they're gonna get us. And I'm like, yeah, like Cylons. But I mean, I don't really think I don't know enough about robotics or artificial intelligence to say either way, but watching Battlestar, I don't think like, oh, that's a great point, let's make sure we don't do this.
Yeah, like, oh cool, let's just stop technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, bring on the robots, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I did see a thing, actually. It was it must have been like a Comic-Con panel or something like that, and it was Edward James Olmos was being interviewed about the finale, and he said, like, because someone said to him, like, oh, how, isn't it interesting that sort of like the two main things he's going to be sort of known for are both about artificial intelligence and robots, like Blade Runner and Galactica. Mm-hmm. And Olmos basically said, like, oh yeah, well, what you should do is when you get to the end of the finale, put on Blade Runner. It's like, okay, like it's a sequel. So it's like, okay, so that's an alternative future where it happens again and robots fuck us up again, but on a different scale. And I started thinking about that. So you can kind of do like, finish Galactica, and then you end with like sort of like, maybe the cycle will be broken, images of robots, and then you watch The Matrix, or then you watch Terminator, or then you watch Blade Runner.
Or iRobot.
Is that sort of... Oh, iRobot, yes.
Just kidding, don't watch that. I didn't even
think about that.
Oh, God.
Yeah, but yeah, I think there is that thing. There isn't sort of a sense of like, oh yeah, no, we're better now. We'll be fine. It is sort of like them saying, oh, maybe they'll break the cycle. Almost feels ironic. Like, it's like, oh no, humanity will end up in exactly the same position. Just you wait.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's weird. I mean, that is such an odd. Unless I don't know. I mean, is it just sort of a plot thing of just like, oh, the story's never over, or is it a thing of like, no, we need to destroy all robots now before they attack us? I don't know. It's weird. It's such an odd fear-mongering thing. Robots.
Yeah.
Much worse things in the world.
Because they repeatedly say, like, this has all happened before and it will all happen again. So, I mean, I just presume we're just somewhere along the Battlestar timeline. So...
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a very bold thing for the show to do, where it's sort of like, it looks like it's over, and then it's like 150,000 years later. Like, oh, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I think that is definitely. I think that's something that rubs people up the wrong way, like that particular final scene. But again, I wasn't that bothered. And the idea that here it was mitochondrion Eve and all that, but again, didn't bother me at all.
I thought it was kind of interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is that thing of like people are like, oh well, wouldn't they find parts of the spaceships and stuff like that? Like, yeah, dude, it's a TV show. Chill.
No, they flew them into the sun. They're gone.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean. Just chill. Just chill.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, like everybody I love found closure in some way, so I don't care what happens after that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
There is a weird thing in this episode, which I don't know whether this had been established in previous episodes. I couldn't remember of when, like, I guess it's Boomer, when she's having a flashback to talking to Ty and Adama, and Ty and Adama are like both drunk and just complete dicks.
They're so mean.
Like, wow, no wonder you shot him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, is it an established thing that Adama's a bit of a dick before the show starts, or I don't know? It just seemed really odd because he was just horrible.
He was pretty mean.
Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, no, I as a finale, thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, I think the having a big sort of like fireworks factory finale where they have a big, it had sort of like a bit of planning. It had the big sort of like explosive finale, and then it had a bit of like an intense amount of weirdness, which the show had been like cultivating for a few seasons. And then obviously, just like you say, the big payoff. They're on Earth, everyone's saying goodbye, everyone's flying to different parts of the world. Obviously, Adama and Rosalind's story ends, Kara vanishes. This is fine. This is a perfectly good ending. It would have been... I don't know what people had hoped for. Or maybe people wanted that thing where it's like, they hadn't found Earth, but they'd killed all the Cylons, and now they were going to go and try and find Earth. In which case, like, nah, not into it.
No.
I want an ending.
Yeah. I mean, after all that time, you sort of deserve to find it, I think. But yeah, and they say it's not actually Earth. I mean, it's just a planet like Earth, and they're like, we're calling it Earth. This is what we've decided. Yeah. I'm like, that's fair. You have that right.
Yeah, call it whatever you want, guys. You've worked really hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I was very, very happy with it. And yeah, I think for me as well, like, this being a show that I absolutely worshipped, obviously 6 or 7 years ago, when I was watching the finale, I was like, oh god, yeah, it's a lot of that, like, oh, Lee's president. Oh yeah, Romo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this guy. It's like, I was like, who the fuck is Hoshi? I couldn't remember that character at all. Like, why the fuck is he Admiral?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, you can take care of the ship. I'm like, who is this guy?
Like, oh, I thought it was going to be like Ty or Tyrell.
Oh, it would
like,
not be Ty.
I had to stop the show. Oh, it wouldn't be Ty, wouldn't it? Ty would just fly the thing into the sun.
Yeah, nobody... well...
I also forgot about Dean Stockwell as being the big villain. I'd completely forgotten about him. Like, that character just like snuck back, the number one Cylon.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, that guy. He's awful.
Oh, Cylons. Do you remember that feeling of being like the final 5? And you're like, who is it? I remember being so stressed about it.
Yeah, and then like... That was a very interesting one, like the reveal of that, where it's like the attack, and then they all start singing the All Along the Watchtower. Like,
not a fan.
Not sure I'm into
this.
this.
I think that's probably the weakest part for me, was that All Along the Watchtower stuff.
Yeah, like that, because I did write here, like that whole thing when she says there must be some kind of way out of here, and then presses the buttons and all that. I was like, that must have looked really good on the page, but actually said out loud, it's so clunky.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's just the fact that it's like I think it's the some kind of bit that winds me up. If she just said there must be a way out of here, click. I don't know. I imagine it's like they've written it down and been like, oh, guys, what do you think of this? Oh my god, that's amazing. And then as soon as she said it, just been like, oh shit, no, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't work. I think that whole motif of the piano and all that was something that just didn't connect with me. And I was watching the show, I was like, nah, this just doesn't. I'm not getting this. I don't know. I'm not happy with it at all. And then the reveal of the 5 where it is like they all sing or they all say one of the lyrics. But no,
yeah.
No, thank you.
No, thank you is exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is that thing with Galactica, and I think they've been quite upfront about it. That there was a lot of making it up as they went along. Yeah. And I think the final 5 were part of that, because that could have been a really interesting idea if they'd known that from the start. That's an interesting thing of like how early you can start like seeding clues. Mm-hmm. But because they sort of making it up as they went along, it was just like it felt like they just arbitrarily picked 5 characters, and you're like, oh, Anders? No, Tyrrell? No, there wasn't a sense of like it was a mystery, so you could be like, oh, if you rewatch episode 3, you'll see that this character says this, and that's like a Cylon thing, But there was none of that. It was just sort of like, oh, these guys.
Yeah, you're right.
They picked 5 names out of a hat.
You're right.
Which is a shame, because that could have been a really interesting sort of like a thing to say. I know I have read people being like, oh, well, if you watch the first episode, if you watch 33 when no one's got any sleep, Ty doesn't seem that tired because he's a Cylon. Like, nah, not buying
that. That episode's amazing.
That episode is amazing. Yeah. That one is one of my favorites. I love the concept of it, of just like the constant thing of like they've got a 33-minute clock.
Yes.
And it gets around, it's like jump, and it's just like they're bringing all the fighters back in. It's just this, they're constantly being kept, because they have to destroy, it's one of the ships, isn't it? It's the Olympia or whatever they have to destroy, I think. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been too long.
I don't know where, I must have, I haven't remembered that name from the TV show. I must have read it this week somewhere for some reason, because, But, and it's actually quite interesting, like saying about making up as they go along. I was reading a thing about the finale, and the finale where you have the thing where Hera's running around and they're chasing after it, and it keeps mirroring with the Opera House dream, and then at the end, like kind of standing there, and there's the 5 figures, and it's the final 5. Apparently, like that was something they worked out while they were writing the finale. Someone was like, "Oh, this is sort of like the Opera House thing," and then that wasn't a thing they'd had planned out. That was something they just worked out on the day. And then did it. Like, for fuck's sake.
Well, it sort of mirrors the show, to be honest. I mean, it seems like if they're creating it and they have no idea where it's going, at the same time, the show is like, they don't know where they're going. So it kind of works out.
Sure. Yeah, and that would make sense. It was very, because that was the thing, that was the weird thing with Galactica, and I think I got through this because I binge watched it, and you're probably the same. But sometimes when I do read stuff about Galactica, there's a few episodes that people single out as being like some of the worst on TV. Like there's some absolute clunkers.
Oh yeah.
But I think if you binge watch it, you're sort of like good, shite, good. It's like, okay, well that one was just an aberration. But there's some episodes like the one where you have to give me a second. Halo. What's his name?
Hilo.
Yeah, and Hilo, and he's like. There's like a marketplace or something.
The black market one? Yeah, I remember the black market.
Yeah, and it's like a gang war.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awful. But apparently that one was the studio had sort of said to them, the network had said to them, we want more episodes that are inside like one room, inside one area. We don't want to save money, so we want to see if you can do episodes that don't have all that space stuff.
Oh, okay.
So they made that episode, and I think after that it was like, oh no, don't ever do that again. More space, please.
I didn't like stuff with the Pegasus. It wasn't. I just remember not liking that.
Yeah, with because they had the kind of the captain who was a bit of a dick, didn't they? I think, yeah. The for me the best ever bit, the best ever episode, or the best ever sequence in Galactica is when. It's one of the Exodus episodes, and they have to save everyone on New Caprica.
Oh yeah.
And they drop the Galactica they FTL it into the sky, and it just goes into free fall. they fire out all the raptors and then it FTLs away. And it's that whole build-up, and then the Galactica's just getting bombarded, and the camera's just pulling away, and you're like, oh no, the Galactica's going to get blown up. And then the Pegasus arrives and fucks everyone up. That was one of those episodes, I think I must have watched that, turned off my telly, gone outside and had a drink, gone to a bar. Because I was just like, this is amazing. I need this to warm my belly. So I went and kind of, had a jug of beer in some bar in Korea. I was like, oh yeah, this is where I am.
Yeah.
And go back. Yeah. Go outside, smoke 10 cigarettes and jump back in. Because I was like, this show is one of those things where there are a few like anomalies, like shit episodes. But when it was firing on all cylinders, there was nothing better than it. Like, there were some episodes and some character pieces and stuff like that where you're like, this is top tier genius.
Oh yeah, it totally blew me away. Like, I don't think I've ever been as invested in a show as I was in Battlestar.
And obviously it's fascinating in the sense of like because sci-fi fans, obviously we tend to be quite territorial, so it's interesting that like, because this is very much not like Star Wars and it's very much not like Star Trek. It is very much its own creature. Definitely just one of those shows that you kind of watching, you think to yourself, I'd love to make something like this. I'd love to be involved in this.
Yeah, when I first watched it, I geeked out really hard too. Like, I was like, I'm going to get a Battlestar tattoo. Like, praise God I did not do that. But I went to, I think it's called the Experience Music Project, that place in Seattle. They had a Battlestar exhibit and they had a Viper there. And I remember being like, I'm going to touch a Viper. Like, I was so excited about it. They had this sort of booth you could go and you could play scenes and then switch the music out and sort of like rescore parts of episodes, and I spent way too much time there. I took so many pictures. Like, it was just kind of a crazy thing I did for a while. So then I found out, it was filmed in Vancouver. So I got super excited about that. I started looking, I'm like, where was it? I'm going to go to all these places. Then I found there was like a group of people who are really obsessed with Battlestar. They would get together and travel around the city and go to all the places it was filming. And I was like, I don't think I'm that invested, but I definitely went to some of those places by myself. And there's scenes I think that are really funny because they do like flyover scenes of the city, and they sort of alter some buildings but leave others. And you can tell where they are. And I remember like when they're on Caprica, there's a few times where you can see they just didn't remove this symbol on the Scotiabank building. And so every time I see Scotiabank, I'm like, Caprica. Yeah, it's really close to home.
That's amazing. Well, obviously, I mean, you must have that quite a lot with Vancouver, because isn't Vancouver... I remember seeing a video online, it was like Vancouver stands in for a lot of places, because I think, wasn't Fringe filmed there and X-Files was filmed there?
Yeah,
Is that Vancouver? Am I mixing myself up?
Yeah, it's, I mean, they call it Hollywood North. It's not uncommon for me to have to wait on the street for like something filming. I've walked into film sets by accident before. Yeah, it's just always here. They did 50 Shades of Grey. I'll never forget that because they brought in a rain machine, and it was just like a colossal joke because all it does is rain here.
yeah, I would say, that's really odd. It tends to be in Melbourne where I live. You see like them filming a lot of not soap operas, but like, dramas and things like that. And I'm always just like, when are they going to do like a really good high concept sci-fi film in Melbourne? That's what I want to see. I want to see mad shit.
Yeah.
But then I guess that stuff wouldn't be filmed on the streets. I don't know what it is that I want.
There's a lot of nature around here that's used. I mean, like any forest scene in X-Files there's a lot of rainforest out here that's used. And I know New Caprica was in some sand dunes in the south. So I think that it's just the kind of the way that the nature is around here makes it flexible for filming. They did Deadpool here too, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, my brother lives in Valencia, and near to where he lives is a thing called the Arts and Sciences, or the Sociedad de Artes Sciences. And it's like this huge, very weird, futuristic set of buildings, and they look incredible. They sort of look like whale skeletons in a way. It's very interesting.
Oh, wow.
And we've been there tons of times. Like every time we go to Valencia, we always find ourselves there, and we take our nephews and we have a good run around and all that. And I think the last time we were there, just after we left. Now, I am a huge Doctor Who fan. Like, when you're saying there about Battlestar Galactica, about getting like a Battlestar Galactica tattoo, I did get a Doctor Who tattoo.
Oh my god!
That's how much I was into
Did you get the TARDIS?
And I think about no, I got like some freaky symbol thing.
Okay.
I'll have to send you a picture of it. It's like the alien language for Time Lord. Sounds silly now to say it out loud, but it's pretty good. And yeah, just after we left Valencia, they actually filmed Doctor Who there. Like, oh, you motherfucker! Like my brother's apartment. Oh, actually, I guess his old apartment looks down upon the arts and sciences, so we just watched it all the time. Like, he did that movie Tomorrowland was filmed there, and he said, like, my brother was, like, walking to the shops, and George Clooney came past him on a little golf cart, like, that kind of thing.
Oh, man.
But yeah, Melbourne, not so much. That's a shame. I guess maybe the tax incentives are not good. Either way. Went off on a bit of a tangent there. All good stuff.
Yeah, it's fine.
Anything else to add about Galactica? Feel free to add anything. Any thoughts, feelings?
I'm looking at my notes here.
I will add that when Gaius' dad appears, and I know like Gaius had been established that he had like a quite thick Yorkshire accent.
So funny.
Like, Ebagum. And then when the dad shows up, and the dad had, I noted, he was Scottish, Irish, Yorkshire, and a little bit of Newcastle as well. Because I think it was just like they got an actor like, can you do an English accent? Like, I can do all the English accents, or British accent. And he just, every time he speaks, it was a different accent. Like, oh, for fuck's sake, just pick one.
And he says to Gaius, like, when Gaius is talking, he's like, oh, I see you've changed your accent again. I'm like, this is the sloppiest way to cover your crappy casting.
Yeah, that's not great. Because I remember that scene with Gaius when he's talking to someone, probably like Gate or something, and he just sort of like, he's talking in his sort of like, I'm Gaius Baltar, his very perceived BBC English. Yeah. And then he drops into like Yorkshire, like, oh, going down to the pub and all that. And I thought that was just a really cool, not really an in-joke, but I went to university in Yorkshire, so I was for years like surrounded by that accent, and it was very interesting to kind of hear him, because when I was a teacher overseas, a lot of English people had to do that. You have to sort of like posh up your accent so your students can understand you. And it was very interesting to always have that with people being like, hello, my name's John, and I teach English. Then you'd put like 2 beers in them, and they'd drop into their regional accent. And I just remember that was something I always loved with Gaius Baltar. Like, oh, okay, so if you got Gaius Baltar pissed, he'd sound like a Yorkshire mining guy. Miner, I think is the word.
Yeah, mining guy.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, no, that was just a random thing that I just always enjoyed about the show, just those little tiny character details.
Yeah, I liked how they sort of just invented things themselves, like using the word frack.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of another show where they made up their own sort of cuss words that worked as well as that.
Yeah, because like you do see Star Wars Rebels, the cartoon show, has when something goes wrong, they say, I think I'm going to get this wrong, I think it's calabast. So it's always like, oh, calabast. Like, yeah, it's good in the show, but you can't really adapt that into the real world. Where frack, for a while, you'd hear a lot of people use that.
Yeah, I am guilty of that. In the past, yes.
Yeah, it's a very easy one to just drop in, whereas like, I can't... Oh, I guess, I don't know if you'd ever would have seen the show Red Dwarf.
No, I haven't.
It's an English show. Red Dwarf is actually quite similar to Galactica in concept. So it's basically there's a crew of a spaceship. One of the crew gets put in stasis for breaking the rules. And when he comes out of stasis, rather than it being like 6 months, it's 3 million years. And the rest of humanity is dead.
Oh my god.
And he's the last human. And they're trying to get back. It's a comedy. And they're trying to get back to Earth. And they had Smeg was their swear word. So it was always like smeg off, smegging this and all that. Smeghead. And that was... It's actually quite weird how close the two shows sort of... Because there was no aliens in that as well. That was all... The baddies were robots or genetically engineered life forms. Like, it was the idea there were no aliens, but humanity had spread out to the stars, like, and brought all this fucked up technology with them.
Right.
But yeah, that's weird that those two kind of match up. Whereas Red Dwarf was like a British sitcom, 20-minute episodes, laugh track, very funny, very English. 6 episodes a season, stuff like that. So very, very little, quite similar in a sense to Battlestar Galactica.
Interesting.
And I'm not sure how well that show will have. It started in the 80s. They still make seasons every couple of years. I'm not sure how well the first seasons will have aged, but yeah.
That's cool.
Good. Anything else?
I don't think
What's
so.
Battlestar Galactica?
I don't think... The only thing that I have not mentioned that's on my list is I wrote Adama cares a lot about water. And that's just because I remember after I watched the show on Twitter, he was always tweeting about this preserving water all the time. And there was like a thing. He's like, if you follow these people who want to save water, I'll follow you on Twitter. And I was like, I need my space dad to follow me on Twitter. So I followed him. And then all he would tweet about was preserving water. That's it.
Interesting. It's very interesting. That's such a... Well, I guess it makes sense. I mean, you got to keep the fleet hydrated.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think... I'm just quickly going through all my notes. Very naval, like a submarine movie. Yeah, no, I mean, I can't... I could probably sit here for a while and just love bomb the show in the sense of like, oh my god, I love this bit, and I love this bit, and I love this bit. It was... I think it's created... Sometimes we do have that with like episodes on this podcast where it's like there's nothing that's replaced it. It's like this thing was amazing, but there's nothing that's quite done that again. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think there is anything Galactica-ish on TV now that sort of does the same, sort of hits the same things, kind of has like a sense of like moral quandaries. It's funny, it's sexy, it's a bit weird, but it's also very dark.
Yeah.
Very human, very real. I don't know if there is anything... I don't even know if there's any good sci-fi on TV at the moment.
Honestly, I don't watch a lot of TV, so I wouldn't know. But I did try watching that show Caprica that came after, and I think I lasted like 3 episodes max.
Yeah, I did one, and I was sort of like, you know what? I'm not into this. I want them to be in space.
Yeah.
I think I'm a space person.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think they've quite come back to fill in the void. I think Galactica is one of those things that, you know, in a few years we'll probably be hearing about them wanting to reboot it again, I can imagine. I think it's got, as a very simple concept, just to boil it down to war between humans and aliens, very small fleet, which is the entire human race, got to survive. That's a concept I feel like they come back around to eventually. But we'll see. I mean, it'd be interesting. If they did...
Did you watch the original Battlestar?
I didn't.
I didn't either.
It was... I think that was more... Because there was that thing as well, I assume in the first episode where the kid's name is Boxy. I think Boxy was a character in the original. Actually, that was the thing I was waiting for, I think, the first time I watched it. When you sort of knew that someone was going to be a Cylon. I was like, is it going to be the kid? But no.
Yeah. Help
Which was good, because that character got dropped very quickly.
Yes, thankfully.
But I think Boxy was a character in the original Battlestar Galactica, and there was like Helper robots, and I'm thinking of Buck Rogers. Yeah, no, I never watched the original. It wasn't for me, and I don't think you'd probably have much fun watching it after watching this.
No, I think it was a lot more campy.
Yeah, probably like I think it was a bit of a Star Wars ripoff, and it was. You know, Starbuck and Apollo were like, you know, Starsky and Hutch, but in space.
Right.
So yeah, probably no good.
Oh well.
And I think obviously that's one thing that was a bit of a master stroke of the show, of turning Starbuck from a male character into a female character for this Galactica, because Starbuck is obviously one of the characters that really stands out, and she has such a fascinating like arc and psychology through the show, and. I don't know about you. I mean, I sort of was like waiting for the point where it's like, oh my god, just get together with Lee Adama. Why is this not happening? Then it sort of happens and then it just doesn't. You're like, oh, okay then. I sort of thought that would be the way. But I guess that was the joy of Galactica. They didn't give you what you wanted.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay, right. Let's wrap it up there before we both descend into puddles of tears.
Yes, please.
Thinking about what happened to all these lovely characters. Right, so Becky, if you wanted to be found on the internet, where would people find you?
Mostly at audiences everywhere right now. That's where I live now.
It's a good place to live.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like people to know where they can find you on Twitter?
Oh yes, you can find me at BexBZ, or BZ if you're American, I suppose.
That makes sense. No, BZ, I think.
Okay.
Canadians, C, Z?
Z.
Z? Oh,
Z.
Interesting. Look at that. I wonder why that is. That's not important. That's nothing to do with this podcast. Anyway, if you're listening and you want to guest on the show, come find me on Twitter at firsttolastpod or email me directly at firsttolastpodcast@gmail.com. I also write on audiencesseverywhere.net. 2017 on audiencesseverywhere.net is going to be the best year ever, I think. Probably, possibly. Let's find out. Otherwise, Becky, thank you for coming on and thank you for choosing this amazing show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. Well, my name is Sean Fallon. This has been From First to Last. Goodbye.